All right, welcome to the first edition of Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest Playoff Push. This is going to be the first of 18 segments that'll air every Wednesday and Saturday here at ITHSW.com. We're going to be talking playoff hockey. We've got two great teams from the Desert Southwest in the playoffs. We have the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL playoffs. We also have the Tucson Roadrunners in the AHL playoffs. And as you see in this show this Saturday, this is the very first show. We've got a special guest joining us tonight. It's Mr. Craig Morgan, who is the Coyotes writer for Arizona Sports here in Phoenix. Craig's going to be joining us to talk playoff hockey, Coyotes, and Roadrunners as well. And a couple things to update you on as we head into this. A few of the series have all been played now, at least one game at least. And two series have actually had two playoff games in the NHL. So as we look, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are knotted up at one game apiece. And in the other two games, the Vegas Golden Knights, on a surprising double overtime win Friday night, lead the Los Angeles Kings 2-0. And the dominating Winnipeg Jets lead the Minnesota Wild 2-0. The other series, all single games, Boston won up on Toronto, San Jose won up on Anaheim, the Columbus Blue Jackets won up on Washington, Nashville won up on Colorado, and Tampa Bay Lightning won up on New Jersey, heading into the second games of their series. As we go along with this, we hope to bring you some updates and let you know some current things, but we'll obviously be focusing on the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll also be focusing on the Tucson Roadrunners, who coincidentally last night clinched the Western Division Conference title as well as the Pacific Division. So congratulations to the Roadrunners. We'll look forward to seeing them as their playoff series begins at home on April 25th. Actually, the first two games will be on the road with their opponent. We'll know tomorrow night, and we'll go forward with that. As far as the Vegas Golden Knights and the Kings go, that series shifts to LA for a game on Sunday and a game on Tuesday. And if there's a Game 5 necessary, that'll be back in Vegas on Thursday night. So without any further ado, let's step up and visit with Mr. Craig Morgan.
In today's odor elimination, sanitizing, and deodorizing market, air spaces and fabrics are treated with very aggressive, highly toxic, and often very dangerous but cheap chemical-based solutions. These chemicals have harmful residues and pollutants that can impact your health and the well-being of those around you. This is the bad news. The good news is there's something better. That something is OxyPal. OxyPal is a fast-growing company based in Phoenix, Arizona, with franchises opening across North America. OxyPal has developed a way to eliminate, not mask or disguise, all organic-based odors in any airspace or on any fabric surface with ozone, also called trioxygen. Ozone is present in the atmosphere, and it is what protects our planet, our environment, and every living thing on Earth. Through years of research and development, OxyPal has perfected a way to harness and apply this powerful solution to purify airspaces and fabric surfaces safely and effectively, eliminating all organic bacteria, viruses, mold, fungi, and allergens on the molecular level. OxyPal has designed and perfected many next-generation and evolutionary alternative products and services safe for people, pets, and our planet. The solutions offered by OxyPal are stronger, safer, non-toxic, and a great value. Visit our website and online store today at www.oxypal.com. On our website, you can make a service appointment, buy products, or learn more about us and our great franchising opportunities.
All right, it's the first installment of the Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest Playoff Push. Why not bring in somebody that knows hockey at every level? The man that's got more experience than a lot of us here in the Valley. And Craig Morgan, first of all, thanks for being our special guest and the beat writer, I guess, or the Arizona sports writer, Coyotes writer for Arizona Sports.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Craig, it's awesome to have you in. I know I've seen your work all over the place, and I know you're breaking stories on the Coyotes and following them along. So before we get into talking playoff hockey, let's talk a little bit about the Coyotes in this season and what they did.
Yeah, fire away.
Tell me a little bit about what you expected from this team. New coach,
Yeah.
New general manager, basically. New roster, basically. So tell me what you thought starting the season with the Arizona Coyotes.
Well, there were clearly a lot of challenges that they were facing at the start of the season with Rick Tockett's new coaching staff, new style of play that was dramatically different for a lot of the players. There were a few that were used to it. Alex Goligoski, one of them, but a lot of the players had to adjust to that style, but also a lot of new faces. You do, as you mentioned, John Chayka just into his second year as the general manager. You had a pretty big shift in ownership as well. So it was it was out with just about everything. So expectations coming into the season, I knew it was going to take a little time for them to adapt to Talk's system, to adapt to each other, to adapt to playing this, this style, this push it north style that Tuck wants. So that in and of itself was a major challenge for the team, along with the new faces that I just mentioned. But then the thing that really derailed them, or two things that really derailed them, they played that insane schedule to start the season where they were traveling over that time period more than any team in NHL history. Yeah. Which is, it's going to happen from time to time, but it was the worst thing that could have happened to a team that was so young and a team trying to learn a new system because they just didn't have a lot of practice time to get it under their belts. Right. So you combine that with the key injuries that they had to goalie Antti Raanta, who missed, I think it was 26 games this season. Nicholas Chalmerson was out of the lineup for a good chunk of the season. And Jacob Chychrun, of course, missed the first 2 months of the season after rehabbing from knee surgery in the offseason. So throw all those things together, and they were off to the worst start in franchise history. Far worse than I think anybody could have envisioned to start the season. But then you flip to the second half, and they're one of the top 5 teams in the league after the new year. So what was that switch that they flipped at 2018? Yeah. Was it the new year? Was it something else? What broke into all of a sudden going to a team that could compete for a playoff spot? Well, it looks nice that it actually happened around the new year. It's a nice clean break with the past, and they talked about it, making New Year's resolutions. Rick Tocchet even said those words, but they got healthy, and that was one of the biggest things. And by then, they had 3 months under their belt playing this style, playing this system. And I think it's important to note that the games that they played over the second half of the season weren't pressure-packed games. Right. They weren't playing for a playoff spot, and that has to be accounted for. You can't just automatically assume that the Coyotes are going to take off from where they left off this season. It's not always that linear progression when the playoffs matter again, when the games matter again. So not having to play under that pressure, but again, understanding the system, having most of the roster healthy for a good chunk until they all went out in the last month of the season again, I think really helped them turn a corner. So you've covered this team for a long time. You know the ins and outs. You've been with them from start to finish, the ups and the downs. Are we on an upside now, a big upside for real? Well, I think it's fair to say that they're moving in the right direction. As I said earlier, and Dave Tibbett always used to say this too, the former coach, that it's easier to win games when there's not the pressure of making the playoffs. So make sure that you take that into account when judging what the Coyotes have done. But when you factor in all the things that I just said, first of all, they're going to come into camp understanding what Rick Tocchet wants from them. Right. And if they're able to sign Oliver Ekman-Larsson to a contract extension this summer, the way I look at it is the top 5 at least of that blue line it's in place. It's set, and it's very good. It's one of the better blue lines in the NHL. And now you've got Antti Raanta signed as your number 1 goalie. Of course, he has to prove that he can stay healthy over the course of an entire season. That was a little bit of a struggle for him as he adapted to becoming a number 1 goaltender for the first time. But when Antti Raanta was in net, he was one of the best goaltenders in the league. So you have to feel really good about the back end right now, in addition to some young forwards and a guy that they brought in like Derek Stepan, who played well. So you've seen that roster. I'm sure you've also seen the Tucson roster, which some of those guys played on last year, and they had a few guys up and down. But that team entering tonight with a chance to clinch the division, how good can those guys be, and will they be a part of the future Coyotes? Well, I think some of the players certainly down there are, but they've also beefed up the Roadrunners roster. John Chayka and Steve Sullivan beefed it up for a playoff run because they believe in breeding a culture of winning. Right. And Tucson obviously is doing a lot of that this year. They're probably going to finish with the Western Conference's best record or best winning percentage as they measure it in the AHL because they play different amounts of games. So that's important. But then when you look at some of the pieces down there, the goaltending, first of all, Aiden Hill has been playing very well. They've got other players like Hunter Miska, and even in guys not in that system yet, Marek Madsen, who they just signed. Yep. They feel good about their goaltending future. And then there are a couple pieces you wonder if Dylan Strome in particular has turned the corner, right? He tore up the AHL just like he tore up the OHL. And then he came up finally to the Coyotes late in the season, and he was producing almost at a point per game pace. Now, there are deficiencies in his game. Rick Tocchet won't mention Dylan Strome without talking about the work he needs to do defensively.
Right.
But he's producing points, and that's something that is a really good sign for them. And clearly, I think Tucson's really happy to have him back down
Yeah,
there,
they are.
because it's a shame in a way that Laurent Dauphin and Nick Merkley are going to miss the playoffs.
Right.
Those two pieces added to the roster that Tucson has right now, that team could certainly contend for a championship. It may, as it is now, they still have a lot of talent on that team, and they could make a run.
Craig, let's take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll talk a little bit more playoff hockey. I want to talk about a rivalry here in the Desert Southwest that everybody's pushing for. I think you know, with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Coyotes. So we'll come right back with more with Craig Morgan. All right, we're back on another segment with Craig Morgan here on the playoff push, Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest. And Craig, an interesting thing happened over the last couple of years in the Desert Southwest. We got a second NHL team about 300 miles to the northwest of us, and I want to get your opinion on that team, the rivalry with the Coyotes, and now the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are actually in the playoffs. First of all, give me your opinion on their program from what you've seen.
Well, it's unprecedented. Everything that they're doing is unprecedented. Nobody expected an expansion team to even have a .500 record, let alone win the Pacific Division and have a chance to at least run to the conference final. They've been a good team, a great team all season long, so they've sustained this. I know a lot of people, when they look at the playoffs now, think Vegas might fall off. Is this where we finally see their vulnerability? But they proved it over an 82-game season. That's a really big sample size to show that you have what it takes. So a lot of things came together for them. Obviously, they have, as you mentioned before we started recording here, Bill Foley, they have a billionaire owner, and that certainly helps matters a lot.
That's a good place to start,
yes,
isn't it?
It's a great place to start. But it's such a unique market. First of all, it's Vegas. There's nothing like it in the world. They don't have another major professional sports franchise up there, so they're the first. And then sadly, you had the shootings, the mass shootings.
Yeah, from 1 October.
You never want to have something like that happen, but it brought the city and the team so close together, and then they won right off the bat. So it's almost like this bond between the city and the team was forged immediately, and they've been winning ever since. There's so many storylines up there that are incredible. William Karlsson's 43-goal season, nobody saw that coming. Gerard Gallant, who in my mind has to win the Jack Adams as the Coach of the Year. George McPhee will certainly be a candidate for GM of the Year. So many great storylines up there. But again, I think what people have fallen in love with about Vegas is it's so unique. There's just nothing like this before. It's so rare to have a story that is so unique. So they've really captured people's imagination.
Tell me what it was like when the Coyotes went up there, that very first home game for them. I know the NHL really wanted that to be a big game, and it turned out to be a big game, but for a completely different reason. But what was it like being in the arena for that one?
Well, because of the shootings that I referenced earlier, there was so much emotion in the building anyway. And, and as I said, first of all, the players in the pregame ceremony were speaking to the crowd about those things. Derek Anglin, one of the more emotional speeches that occurred during that pregame ceremony. But in all my time covering professional sports, and I've covered pretty much all of them, the only thing that ever came close to that in terms of emotion, in terms of the feeling in the building, was when Ray Charles sang before the World Series, before the Diamondbacks played the Yankees. There was just, you could feel the emotion, you could feel the energy in that building. It truly was palpable. One of the most memorable experiences I've ever had as a sports writer.
So we're into the playoffs now. Obviously the Coyotes are not in, but give me your opinion on some of the teams in the playoffs. Who do you like to come out of the East and the West from what you've seen?
Well, I'm a little boring on this. In the West in particular, I still like Nashville. I think they're the most complete team. When I look at the season that Pekka Rinne's had behind what in my opinion is the best blue line in hockey, that's a really good starting point. But they've really added to their depth up front. They added Kyle Turris during the season, so their center depth, while they don't have that elite number one guy, they have a lot of depth up the middle. I think that's the best team in the West. If you're looking for teams that could challenge them, certainly the Winnipeg Jets. They just don't have the playoff experience. I think it's a big step to go from never having won a playoff game to winning the cup. It seems like it takes a little bit longer to build toward that, but Winnipeg has the talent. And then Vegas, again, you can't discount what Vegas has done. They've won the Pacific Division. They have a chance to at least to get to the conference final, and that's a very tough building to play in. So they have a chance. Flipping to the East, up until maybe the last month of the season, I really would have stuck with Tampa Bay as my pick, and they're certainly still among those favorites. But Boston, the way they finished the season, other than that last month where they had to play 5 games in 8 days, Boston's certainly in the mix. But don't discount the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they
never can
they
we?
Certainly reminded everyone in Game 1 when they beat Philadelphia 7-0. That is a team that understands what it takes once they get to the postseason. What they did in the regular season doesn't really matter to me because they understand the process. They still have the high-end skill. If Matt Murray can play at the level that he did last year in the postseason, that is a team to be reckoned with.
Starts and goal at playoff time, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about when we look at the playoff teams in there right now and the draw that Vegas got. I don't know if they really were hoping to get the Kings in the first round, but that was a pretty physical first game, and I know we got one going on tonight as we tape this one. But tell me what you think about the physicality of Vegas. Can they hang in there with some of those teams in the West?
No, I don't think that's a problem for Vegas. I think they can play that style of hockey that LA brings. Now, LA has a lot of experience, of course, in the first round, and I think people worried about that matchup because of that. But again, I think that goes back to this narrative about Vegas that they're not ready to challenge, that this has all been sort of a mirage. I just don't buy it. It was an 82-game season. They proved it over a long course there, and now they've got a 1-0 lead in the series, and they're going to be playing Game 2 at home with Drew Doughty out of the lineup due to the suspension. So they have a chance to get a 2-0 lead in this series and really get a leg up.
I saw that game, and the first thing that I thought of was it appeared that Vegas wanted to put pressure on Doughty. They were hitting him every time he touched the puck. And Jeff Carter was the second that I thought they tried to eliminate. Is that kind of what you were seeing too from that one?
Yeah, and it makes sense. When you look at the Kings, you think, other than Jonathan Quick in goal, you think about 3 players in particular that are going to drive that team. And Drew Doughty, certainly with the minutes that he logs every game, he's probably number one. And then you look at their great centers, Anze Kopitar and now Jeff Carter, who's back in the lineup and has made a world of difference for that team with his return. But Doughty's on the ice so much and factors so much into their transition game, getting pucks up to the forwards. That's a guy that they have to focus on and try and at least take off of his game.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back and wrap it up with Craig Morgan. We're going to make him talk a little Tucson Roadrunners, give us some of the insight as they approach the Calder Cup playoffs. We'll be right back. All right, we're ready to wrap up the first edition of Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest Playoff Push Edition. Craig Morgan's still with us. I'm keeping him here because right now I want him to talk a little Calder Cup playoff hockey. And, we're talking Tucson Roadrunners, and you and I talked a little bit off camera about that team. And I know you don't get a chance to probably follow the AHL the way other people do, but I know you follow the guys down in Tucson. And give me your thoughts on what you're thinking of that roster and how far can they go in the playoffs?
Well, I do think because of the moves that they made, adding a guy like Carter Camper, for instance, has just been critical for them because Dylan Strome was up with the Coyotes for a good chunk of the latter part of the season, and they lost Laurent Dauphin. So when you take 2 centers out of the lineup, it's clearly going to create a hole. But Camper is a high-end player, more of an AHL player, but he's certainly helped them. I think they have the depth. I really do think they have some really good depth down there. Their goaltending has been terrific recently. That's a team that can do a lot of damage in the playoffs. Now, in terms of the players that might be making a mark on the Coyotes in years to come. We talked about this earlier, the goaltending. Obviously, Hill and Miska are two guys to watch down there. But beyond that, I think three forwards that you look at, of course, Dylan Strome, who's already made his mark a little bit at the NHL level. Nick Merkley, if he can get healthy, he could probably provide some scoring for them on the right wing. And then, of course, Lawson Krause, who they've really sent down to try and work on his puck game a little more. And do more of the things that Rick Tocchet wants from him. He certainly has the size. He can be that net presence, but they just wanted him to work on his puck skills. So those are three guys to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop over the next couple seasons.
Talk a little bit about the new coaching staff down there too, with Mike Van Ryn coming in, and you know, I've had a chance to visit with him several different times, and he's really no nonsense when we're talking hockey. He likes hockey, he talks hockey, and he knows hockey. But tell me your opinion of Mike Van Ryn and the job he's done.
Well, he was obviously their development coach, the Coyotes, before he took that job, and I just the general feeling I get from the organization, from John Chaika, from assistant general manager Steve Sullivan, who is of course Tucson's GM as well, they just feel that everybody's on the same page right now, and that's so critical when you're trying to build an organization, that everybody's teaching the same things, and they feel like he is a guy who can instill those fundamentals and get these guys prepared for the next level. And when I went down to talk to Mike last about a month ago, he talked about that very thing, striking that balance between wanting to win games because you do want to breed a winning culture, but also making sure that these guys are doing the things that they'll have to do at the next level. Sometimes those two don't go together at the AHL level. You're trying to play a different way, but he is really trying to get them to do the things that they'll need to do in Rick Tocchet's system in the NHL to be successful.
Now, as they get ready down in Tucson to close out their second season, the fans' support has been incredible. I know I was down there last Friday night, I guess it was, for Superhero Night, and the building was packed. Had a chance to visit with Craig Cunningham a little bit and what he's done. And can you believe what's happened in Tucson as far as the hockey market?
Well, it happened so quickly, and that's so great. And in some ways, again, other than the U of A, what else do they have? So you can really capture the town if you have some success. Now, they started off fast last year in their first season, but of course faded, and that's part of the reason they tried to add more depth this season to be able to sustain that success. I really want to see what's going to happen down there during the postseason. If they can get on a run, they can really capture this town, similar to the way we talked about Vegas capturing, the Golden Knights capturing Vegas.
So let's wrap things up by talking a little hockey in the Desert Southwest. You've been here. It's 110 in the summer, 120 in the summer. Nobody
Not
really,
in here though, right?
No, nobody really looks like this as a hockey market. But the Desert Southwest is becoming a hockey market, hasn't it? From NCAA to AHL to NHL.
Yeah, you add Arizona State as a Division I program, that certainly raises the profile, and I think creates just an incredible advantage, because where else is there warm weather and a Division I hockey market?
Right.
As soon as they get that arena in a couple of years, I think they're going to have a massive recruiting advantage. But then you look at the USA hockey numbers. For the last several years, Arizona has been one of the fastest growing states in terms of hockey participation in the United States. So it's clearly making an impact. I know a lot of cynics from outside will say the NHL doesn't belong there, hockey doesn't belong, but it really takes a generation to embed a sport in a culture. It's not about so much the adults that you come to that often are transplants from other cities. It's about the kids that grow up here. They grow up rooting for the Coyotes or ASU, and that becomes their team. They become hockey fans of Arizona teams, and that's the way you build a hockey base. And
that's what you're seeing right now, right?
Absolutely.
With the likes of Austin Matthews and some of the guys that have come up through the programs and moving on. And people ask me all the time, well, how many people play hockey down there? I said, well, just go to an arena at any time, 24 hours a day, and you're going to see people on the ice. So we'll kind of wrap up quickly with just talking about the women's program, too. I know the Small Fries and the Coyotes' job with them and what Matt Schott's done, and Lindsay Ellis here at ASU, and, of course, the program over at Grand Canyon with Natalie Rossi stepping in there, and the Lady Coyotes and all that good stuff. So give me your thoughts on women's hockey and growing it here in the Desert Southwest.
Well, it's along the same lines, and you love to see that, because you want, there's that saying in the NHL that everyone can play. It's that whole program of getting everybody involved, and you're talking about more than half the population if you're talking about women or girls. Now, I come from a marriage where my wife also played college hockey, and now my youngest daughter is playing, so I am a huge fan and a huge proponent of this. Glad to see it moving in the direction it is.
Craig, I appreciate you taking the time with us, and hopefully we can get you back on one of these other following 17 segments, and as the playoffs get a little closer to a culmination, and
Go Roadrunners, right?
Thanks again for having me. Yeah, go Runners.
All right, folks, we're here to wrap up the first edition of Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest Playoff Push. Great show tonight. Had an opportunity to visit with Craig Morgan. I want to thank Craig for taking the time to come in and providing us with his expertise. I also want to thank our sponsors, OxyPow, the Ice Den in Chandler, of course, the University of Arizona for all their support during the season and along with us now. We also want to encourage you, if you're interested in jumping on board with us, we do have some opportunities for you to join us and become a sponsor of Hockey Talk in the Desert Southwest, the playoff push. We're going to be running a Wednesday and a Saturday show all the way through the playoffs. That'll take us into June, and hopefully we're going to bring home a Stanley Cup to the Desert Southwest and a Calder Cup as well. So stay tuned for the next show, which will be up next Wednesday.